If you're watching this video, then I'm going to assume that, like me, you have a properly cheap old car like my little £400 20-year-old Polo. It's basically impossible to make my Polo look expensive, but with a few small changes it's definitely possible to make it look more expensive than the £400 that I paid for it, without breaking the bank. So in this video I'm going to give you 10 cheap ways to make your car look more expensive. Let's get straight into it. It will sound simple, but honestly, getting a cheap old car a full thorough detailing will give it a new lease of life. And I don't just mean a clean, I mean going all out with a proper detailing session. This is something that you can do yourself, but you should be aware that it will take you a long time to get professional results. You'll need a good bit of space and a lot of patience as well to get it absolutely correct, plus some very specific tools. I'd say anyone with a good sized garage or a decent driveway can do a decent job of it, but the time factor will remain regardless, which we'll get onto in a second. Typically you can get a full detailing kit for under £100, and if you're just trying to clean a car you can probably get everything you need for under £25, which is pretty reasonable. But it's really important to remember that detailing does take a lot of talent and a lot of time. For less than £200 you get your entire interior and exterior valeted, and for just under £400 you get the paint correction done too, which gets your paint looking as shiny and consistent as possible. Typically if you want these jobs done well, it's good to leave your car with a good detailer for a day and it will come back looking brand new. Honestly, from this video, this is arguably the best way to make your car look more expensive, though it's actually a little bit more pricey and doesn't last forever. Much simpler to do than detailing and much longer lasting, getting a new set of shoes for your car can really go a long way to making it look a lot more expensive. However, the wrong wheels can also do the exact opposite and make your car look tacky or a bit rubbishy. I think one pretty consistent way to uprate the aesthetic value of your car is to buy OEM alloys from a more expensive version of your car. For example, if you drive a VW Golf, maybe get some OEM GTI alloys on it, which typically you can find on eBay. If you do want to go for cheaper aftermarket alloys, maybe consider swapping the badges on those alloys for the OEM ones, as this can help them to make them look a little bit more legit. You have to remember though that yours should be the only opinion you care about when modifying the exterior of your car. If you think something looks better or more expensive on your car and you both want it and can afford it, buy it. Don't listen to anyone else. A highly popular vanity item here in the UK, and to be honest all around the world, is personalised number plates. If you go on DVLA registrations you can get yourself a personalised plate for less than £250 in our current registration style, or for around £400 you can get older plates which are better for disguising the age of your car and getting something very personal to you that looks a little bit more drip. There's a stereotype around personalised plates being something that people with too much money have on their cars, which is probably fair as they are essentially entirely pointless, but many people have them here in the UK, and if I put it very crudely, the fewer digits you can get on there, the more rich you look. One problem many old cheap cars suffer with is fogged up lights, or more simply, pretty dim lights compared to the ridiculously bright lasers we see today. This gives you a great option to very easily uprate the exterior of your car and make it look that bit more expensive. There are a few ways to solve these problems. Cheapest route is to get yourself some headlight cleaner and sealant, which will cost you less than a £5, and some brighter white light bulbs as a replacement for old ones, which shouldn't cost you more than about £30 depending on quality that you go for. If you want to spend a bit more money, you could replace your lights completely with new OEM ones and the lighter bulbs, which will ensure the lights look as fresh as possible. And if you want to go all out, LEDs and day running lights is probably the most popular but also slightly more expensive way to get your car looking more premium. I personally probably won't do this on my Polo as it doesn't feel like great value for money when they start at around £140. In my opinion, you should never up badge a car under any circumstances. If you have a BMW 320d SE, don't put an M Sport badge on it, and if you have a standard Golf, don't put GTI badges on it either. It's simple, you don't make your car look more premium by putting fake badges on it. But an old, well tested and effectively free route into making the exterior of your car look a little bit cleaner is debadging. Yes, you're not fooling anyone by taking the Polo off your VW Polo or the Corsa off of your Vauxhall Corsa, but it does give a slightly different look to your car. And don't feel like it has to be the badges at the back only. Think about the additional badges that often appear around the front or rear wings of cars, as they can also disappear. A bonus route to success with badges is to join a car club, which in many cases have their own badges. Join a club and get one of those badges on your car, and other car people will know your car is your pride and joy. Manufacturers love to put these plastic bumper trims on cars to look after the doors when they open, look after paint on bumpers when they tap a pole or something like that, and generally to make cars look a little bit more rough and ready. Not always, but usually these are found on cheaper cars and cheaper versions of cars. That leaves the door open for us to repaint these plastic trims and make the car look a bit more premium, which typically means you need to remove them from the car, sand them down, and paint them in the same colour as the car with a few layers, then lacquer it to keep it safe before putting it back onto the car. Depending on paint cost and how much you need, it can easily cost less than 50 quid all in to complete, and is a fun weekend job that makes your car look a little bit less cheap. However, it can also be quite difficult to get things off and on, so I would suggest going with someone who knows what they're doing. This is a weird one, but I think tyres can really help a car to look more expensive. A good brand of tyre often has a good shine to it, and new grooves with the right depth just look a bit cleaner, newer, and more expensive. The problem is, like alloys, tyres can be expensive, and of course they're consumable, so if new tyres aren't a necessity, I recommend investing in some tyre gloss, which you'll easily get for under a tenner and will genuinely help to make your black tyre walls pop in a way that you simply wouldn't expect. It can also be used on black trim to make it look that bit more premium if you can't be bothered with spending the time and money on painting it in the previous section. I've spent this entire video talking mostly about the exterior of the car, so for the last three, let's look at the parts of the car that make it feel more premium on the interior, so that when people get into your car, it gives us the impression of being more expensive. On cheap old cars like mine, it's likely the infotainment will be lacking. Particularly on early 2000s cars, it's all about CD players still, and usually smaller single DIN radios. I think a very reasonable way to solve this is to go for an Apple CarPlay or Android Auto double DIN radio, or even one of the single DIN ones just with a jutting out touchscreen. Immediately you have a car that you can connect your phone to, meaning easy access to music, maps, podcasts, phone calls, whatever it is you want, without having to put your life and license at risk by illegally using your phone while driving. You can get cheaper knockoff units on eBay for 100 quid or so, but these can actually look even cheaper than OEM stuff, or you can take a trip to Halfords and you'll be looking at around £300 for a more established brand like Sony or JVC, which looks a bit more premium, but it's up to you. I would also consider pairing this with a nice set of speakers that give you good sound quality to go with it. Though if you have a loud car with bad sound deadening like my MX-5, this is probably pointless, as my nice new speakers are inaudible over the sound of the supercharger, but the speakers cost less than 40 quid and do sound a lot better than the standard ones. Finally, as a point on infotainment, and this won't apply to all cars, but some of you might have a car that has an aftermarket digital dash to replace the analog instrument cluster. I usually see these for old BMWs, but to add to the infotainment, I think is a pretty cool way to make your car feel a little bit more modern. Interior materials in cars are often the biggest corner cut, even in expensive cars. I've just helped a friend buy a 992 Turbo, and we were both surprised at how much plastic there still is on the interior in places that could easily be swapped for something a little bit more premium. In cheap cars, there are plenty of cheap materials for you to swap out. You might have seen I swapped a bunch of the plastic on my MX-5 dashboard and doors for carbon fibre, which is one example, but even if the materials themselves are too expensive, it's cheap and pretty easy to wrap interior car parts in carbon fibre or an equivalent. If you can swap for a different material, I would argue it both looks and feels better, and some parts in particular are cheap to replace, like gear boots, which you can usually find leather examples of for less than £20. With nicer materials on the interior, everything just feels that little bit more premium. And finally, a nice and easy one. In older, cheaper cars, it's highly likely the floor mats will be crusty and tired from dealing with your dirty shoes for many miles. Get a nice new set of floor mats, either a basic one-for-one replacement or maybe some with a bit more flair to them, like a logo or whatever, and you'll make the lower section of your interior feel much nicer, and it shouldn't cost you much more than £20. So hopefully once you've implemented all of those ideas, your car will look and feel a lot more premium both inside and out. If this video helped you or you enjoyed it, do hit the like button and subscribe as well if you're new here, and let me know in the comments if you do anything else to make your car look a bit more premium. Massive thanks to the patrons and to you guys as well for watching, but you should definitely click here if you want to bypass all of these ideas and go straight to buying a cheap car that already looks expensive.